third chakra, which is kind of fascinating, is we have a conscious mind, like an individual mind matrix in there, of which our conscious mind and the thoughts of our conscious mind are working. And then we also have a karmic mind, if you will. And this is kind of like a personality overlay. It's got some kind of attributes and imprints, you know, based upon, you know, your parenting, you know, like we chose our parents. What a good example is our astrological configurations. This is actually a very detailed soul science. It is a magnetic imprint on the soul that creates influences on the consciousness to behave and perceive in a certain way. Now, you are not governed by this, but what happens is as you become more developed in your consciousness, you are now not subject to the influences of your astrological imprint. But the astrological imprint is designed to give you the experience, the attributes and characteristics that you may need to develop as a soul or chose to experience in this particular realm to achieve the things that you wanted to achieve or balance what you wanted to balance. It's very, my point is that it's very specific to your soul blueprint. There is nothing trite about your astrological configuration. It's huge. It's a really big part of your soul matrix and what you are here to experience. And if you go back and you want to really understand your soul purpose, these are ways to do it. Go look at everything, your houses, your charts, and what the energies and attributes around that are, and they are direct clues to your soul purpose. Like many of the times you'll find someone who's born with these attributes of leadership, but they're scared to death of leadership, and you know, okay, this person is going to have to experience leadership in this lifetime. I mean, there's really no point to resist it, because your soul basically saying you're doing it. So you either work with it and learn to get through your fear. You know, so it's kind of interesting when you go back and you actually look at your, you know, and it also applies in numerology as well. There's, you know, you can take all of these various disciplines and they all kind of segue. It's really kind of fascinating.
Okay, speaking of which, I have a question for you.
Sure.
It has to do with the number 6.
Yes.
Which I've been sitting here noticing 1, 2, 3 equals 6, 5, 4, 5, 6 adds up to 6, 7, 8, 9 adds up to 6, and 10, 11, 12 adds up to 6, and so does 13, 14, 15 adds up to 6, and it's the 15 dimension also adds up to 6. So
right.
Speaking of that, what's up with the number 6 and
well,
what's
and you know
going
what's
on
so
here?
amazing about that is now for me, because what has often been described is that the earth, the primary theme of the earth is unconditional love. 6 to me means love expressed. So, you know, and there's some weird method, you know, 666 is the Antichrist, blah, 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 but that's, you know.
Probably
yeah,
means
that's
it's
not.
not.
Yeah. What?
That probably means it's not the Antichrist.
Yeah, exactly. So that's actually pretty
key.
fascinating, because they've actually, when I've gotten information, they've talked about the earth being the heart center of the universe and kind of the jewel in the lotus of the universe, that the beings that come to the earth are really honored and revered for their ability and experience with love energy, because apparently that's very rare in the other life forms experience. And that's something that's constantly been said to me, and I guess it's hard for us in terms of reference, but certainly I've met some beings without any developed emotional bodies, like the reptilians and some of the other races that observe earthlings. You know, if anybody in this room, I don't know, I'm like sharing my experience with this, but you know,
they don't have a conception of love.
Yeah, they don't have a conception of love. They are completely have no way to perceive it, feel it. They look at you as an oddity. They cannot figure out what it is, and that's really fascinating. And I have had a time at one point where I had a master tell me a part of Earth's experiment is to bring an integration point, because we are an amalgamation of incredibly varied genetic codes. Basically, they took, and again, I'm just sharing with you my information. Please defer to your own judgment and what feels right. But as they have described this to me, we took a huge amount of genetic material from the entire time matrix, and we brought it to be seated on the earth to create an integration point, because there was a lot of conflicts and imbalances in certain races, you know, jockeying for position, power, dominion, and there were some races that had evolved to such place where they were not connected to the one source, all source. I would call that a finite technology. The thing that's different about human beings is that each one of us is connected to God's source without fail. That's it. So we are actually a very special race, and actually there's been some jealousy and weirdness. There are races that are not pro-human, which is kind of a weird thing, but you know, that's, in my experience, I've definitely experienced that. And so they said that one of the objectives of the human race is that any soul, any life form that can existing anywhere else can embody into a human. And that was what the purpose was. So that we would create a genetic blending and merge that would heal genetic race wars. And that it would allow a place where beings could experience love as source, because the only healing comes through the love as source. You cannot heal your bodies without this. So that was the problem, is they were beings that had cut off from their source and had no way to heal, had no way to evolve. And so I found that kind of interesting. That was one of the tidbits about, like, say, the Zeta Reticuli, is the Zeta had gotten to a point in their evolution where they had created so much technology that cut them off. They were doing dimensional blending, they understood how to manipulate time-space and do, you know, wormholes and warp, and they did something to the point where they damaged their own system. So they got to a certain point in evolution where they couldn't go any further, and they started to digress. And they apparently did not see that coming. So over time, because they couldn't get the genetic material to expand or heal or do whatever they needed to do, they started to digress, and they couldn't procreate anymore, and they started to get sick. They started to become kind of like human beings are, you know, because we are living out of harmony with Source. That's the source of all illness and imbalance, is because we're not in harmony with our true nature. And again, that's what the Ascension is about, is coming into harmony with our true nature. So that was an interesting tidbit about another, I just thought, fascinating role of the human race. I think that's just the coolest thing ever. So anyway, so back to our third dimensional body, our solar plexus, in knowing that that is our mind grid. It's our conscious mind grid. It's our karmic mind grid. And it's our collective unconscious mind grid. So we're talking about three brains, but the mind grid in here actually has three components to it. And so what happens is, in an undeveloped mind, someone who isn't very developed mentally, you are using a lower, let's say, a lower expression of your mind matrix. So this is what's fascinating about the Ascension process, is we actually have minds at each level. So as we go up the scale, it's kind of funny to say, we actually get more intelligent. We get more divinely intelligent because we're being accessed now. Different fields of energy that are purifying us. We're becoming more divine and more perfect. You know, and this is again a semantics issue. It's very hard to say. We are this already. However, at this space in human evolution, we are here in a greater collective to evolve the human species in such way to restore it to its original divine blueprint. And so that has been described to me as a 12th dimensional monad. So this would be a being that has full 12-dimensional awareness, realizes its individuation at some point, but also has a collective and group consciousness and is aware of the interconnectedness of all things. And so at this level, we wouldn't have, let's say, any veils of illusion or any veils of not understanding that what I do, what you do, what all of us do affects everyone. So at this level, you know it affects everyone, so it's a whole different awareness of being. There's a oneness in understanding. There wouldn't be such thing as hurting your neighbor. You'd be hurting yourself. There would be no point. Why would you do that? So here at this level, of course, we don't see that, so there's a lot that goes on here. So, again, I think that's pretty, does everybody feel like pretty clear about 4 bodies and 3 brains? And that was pretty much the 3rd dimensional level of being. This is where most human beings are at right now.
I just wanted to ask, do you, what does the mind look like in each chakra? What does it look like energetically to you when you see it?
A morph field. Okay, so a morphogenetic field is a form-holding blueprint. So again, every level has a form-holding blueprint, and I refer to this is referred to as the morphogenetic field. The morph field has the instruction set. So it's almost like they're dormant. These instruction sets are dormant until the critical mass is reached in your field. So say someone, you know, like the most of humanity right now, they're leaving the third dimension, they're leaving the chakra. They're going through the dark night of the soul, because basically this is the biggest challenge, because you're leaving now human order. Human order is the mind. It says rationale, logic, linear, yada yada, you know. And all of a sudden, you're put into a tailspin. And this is kind of, you know, again, the dark night of the soul process. And for each one of us, it's different, but the feeling is exactly the same. We all feel the same thing, but the outside movie looks a little different. So as you move into this now, all of a sudden then, the heart chakra starts to open and expand with a new quality of energy. So it may be that this person, because most of humans now actually on the planet, because of the planetary evolution, because we've been getting downloads on this planet like no tomorrow. Those of you that are energetically sensitive, that work with the grids, know this. We are getting just pummeled. It is like we are so accelerated with energy right now, we've got it coming out of everything. And one of the things that's funny for me is I use the quantum, the QXCI, which reads the body, and the quantum even quantifies it in some way, which I find just fascinating. So the quantum actually calls it radiation exposure. So I am seeing everyone that comes to my office that does get a quantum scan. I am seeing EMF, ELF, every field of, I mean, the body, we're coming in just like radioactive. There is so much energy that our bodies are attempting to assimilate and distribute and get it through the proper channels. And that's again, I think the etheric surgery and all of this is going to be the career of the future, because if this is any indicator how fast these energies are going to be going, because people, this is the issue, is we must prepare our bodies, our minds, and our emotional selves for these energies. You know, if we don't, then what happens is we constrict from fear, or we constrict, you know, the resistance in our body will constrict the energy and the body will get sick. So it's super, super important to know how to expand your body and to stay, you know, and of course we will have moments of constriction, you know, but to again work to open, bring in source, open, to know that that's your job as well, is to keep yourself as open as possible to divine and spiritual force. And that's why I really think a practice is vital now. I think so we have a grasp on kind of using again the four body system as kind of the, you know, base model of understanding the spiritual bodies. And again, you know, this is really coming from a level of, once we understand our multidimensional anatomy, we will understand how to move and control our hologram. We are in a hologram, and we are the hologram. So the importance of understanding how these energy fields exist and are a part of you as a multidimensional being, it will move it out of concept and intellect and into an experience of who you are. Because we can talk about everything as energy, you know, and I think we know that fundamentally, but when we go into the world, somehow we get caught up in the illusion again. So this is again just to kind of give you another reason why, and it's funny, I can almost say I'm a stickler on it. Like I can feel they're a stickler on it too. It's like this is the key to the liberation. When you understand who you are as a multidimensional being, and you understand how these energy fields are working, not only within your beingness, but as you expand even beyond your own sense of individuation into a group consciousness, into the collective, into the universal, you can now again feel the illusion that this reality is. And that really is kind of like the keys to the matrix, the keys to the kingdom exists in your own anatomical structure, your spiritual anatomical structure. So that's why this information is hugely important. because not only, I think what I really feel I want to stress today is our connection. Like, we've had a lot of class information, you know, those that have had, you know, the Barbara Brennan and this particular school of thought. We've talked about our chakras. We've talked about, you know, this layers of being, but we haven't talked about the dimensions. We haven't talked about the DNA. I want you to see the interrelationship of the fact that your first chakra